Hi everyone, in today's video we're going to be looking at the applications of algebra in real life problems. So in your exams or in your workbooks or at school you might come across certain wordy applications where you need to use algebra, and in this video I'll be showing you step-by-step methods to help you solve almost any of those types of problems using an example as follows. Okay, so now let's look at the first problem that involves finding a distance between two certain points using algebra and equations. So a train travels between the towns of Mapleton and Lakeside. Somewhere along the railway line there's a station, and the station is 3 times farther from Lakeside than from Mapleton. If the total distance between Mapleton and Lakeside is 120 kilometers, how far is the station from Mapleton? So you might be wondering, what are the steps, or where do we even begin to start in resolving this? Well, let's break it down, the steps first. Okay, so now there are 3 main steps you can follow to solve almost any sort of problem like this that requires algebra and finding an unknown. So the very first step is to map the problem out as visually as possible. So working out what's what and how it all comes together. And that gives you an idea of where to look when trying to find the unknown. The second step is to identify your known variables and unknown variables, or variable. And then the third step is to solve for the unknown variable using the information found in steps 1 and steps 2. So we'll be using these 3 steps to figure out what this distance is in this problem as follows. Okay, so now let's apply step 1, map the problem out visually. So in this case, we've got 3 locations: Mapleton, Lakeside, and the train station, which is right in between. And in between Mapleton and the train station, we've got a distance. And between the train station and Lakeside, we've got a distance also, which is 3 times the first distance that I mentioned. And finally, we've got the total distance at the bottom between Mapleton and Lakeside. So these are the 3 variables, known and unknown, that we will use to find the unknown, which is the distance from Mapleton to the train station. So let's carry on to step number 2 and get clear on our known variables and our unknown variables. Okay, so now we'll move on to step number 2, and we identify the known variables and the unknown variables. So the first unknown variable that we're trying to find in this problem is the distance from Mapleton to the station. Let's call this D1. The second unknown variable is the distance from the station to Lakeside, which is 3 times the distance above. Let's call this 3D1, another unknown variable. And finally, we have a known variable, which is the distance from Mapleton to Lakeside, which is 120 kilometers. Let's call this D total equal to 120 kilometers. So now we have our variables. We now can move on to step number 3 and try and find the answer. Also, as you can see, I mapped out the different variables in the problem that we looked at visually before. So D1 is the distance, which is Mapleton to the train station. 3D1 is 3 times the distance from the train station to Lakeside. And D total is the total distance, 120 kilometers from Mapleton to Lakeside. So that's a good way to actually map it all out in the picture there. Okay, so now moving on to step number 3, we solve for the unknown using the information from step 1 and step 2. So going back to the question, let's just highlight what we're trying to find here. So they asked in the question, if the total distance between Mapleton and Lakeside is 120 kilometers, how far is the station from the station to Mapleton? So our unknown is therefore D1, which is what we already stated. So that's correct. This is what we're trying to find out. And based on that, we already know that the total distance is equal to 120 kilometers. And also, we already know that the total distance not only equals 120 kilometers, but it also equals to d1, the distance we're trying to find, plus 3 times the distance we're trying to find, 3d1. Now, if we were to simplify this even further, we get 120 kilometers equal to d1 plus 3 times d1. So based on all that, all we need to do to find d1 is to solve for it in this equation here, which corresponds to what they're asking us to do, which is the distance from the station to Mapleton. Okay, so now let's solve this equation to find the unknown d1 for this problem. So the very first thing we do in equations is to get the unknown that we're trying to find on the left-hand side. So let's rearrange this so that we've got d1 plus 3d1 on the left-hand side equal to 120, as shown here. So now we simplify both sides of the equation. On the left-hand side, d1 plus 3d1 equals 4d1 equal to 120. No need to simplify that, so it is what it is. And now to get d1 by itself, we need to divide the left-hand side and the right-hand side by 4. So 4d1 divided by 4 is d1, and 120 divided by 4 is 30. So now our answer to this question is 30 kilometers, and that is the distance from Mapleton to the station. Okay, so now if you ever want to check your answer in case you're by yourself or you're in an exam or you don't have the teacher around, a good way to really check if your working out is correct is to substitute d1 equals to 30 kilometers back into the main equation here. So let's do that. So we substitute d1 equals to 30 into the equation. So we've got 30 plus 3 times 30. We evaluate that and we get 120. So this proves that this calculation is correct and the actual distance is correct also. So there you have it. Okay, so now let's sum up the 3 main steps that you can use that we just discussed to solve problems like this in algebra, where you're dealing with a particular situation or application and you need to find an unknown. So the first step is to map the problem out. Once you map it out and you've got a good idea of what's going on, you can then identify what you need to solve. Step 2, work out what's known and what's unknown. This includes what you need to solve plus what's already given to you in the question. And then step 3, once you've got a good idea of what it is you're trying to solve and what it looks like, you can go ahead and solve for the unknown variable that they're asking for. Okay, so that's all for today's video. I recommend you watch this a few times to get a good feel for it and just practice the very same question on your own with pen and paper and even apply it to other questions you've got in your own lessons. Please feel free to post any questions or comments below or send me a message. Be happy to answer that, whatever it is. And I'll see you in the next video. Thank you for watching.